Oi, oi, it's your boy, Jack Slack, and it's Top Player FM. And you're listening to another 30 minutes of rambling about guard passing, uninterrupted by commercials. No, we're probably going about 5 minutes today because they've bugger all happened over the weekend. Just enough happened that if I don't cover it, I'll be viewed as a lightweight by the hardcore MMA fans. But a lot of those same MMA fans probably haven't watched this card, or at least had it on in the background and second screen viewed it. The card was Aljamain Sterling versus Yusuf Zalal. Not a bad headliner. Very little effort put into the rest of this card. 13 fights, 2 finishes. My goodness. That was a long watch the next morning. It's not so bad if you're watching it live. You're just like, oh, this is shit, isn't it? With everyone else having a good laugh. If you wake up the next morning and you go, right, what have I got to watch? Did anything interesting happen? And you look at the results and you go, oh, I'm in for a solid 4 hours of decisions here. That's a bit grim. But that's the sacrifice I make as a UK MMA fan talking about MMA. There were 3 things that really impressed me on this card. 2 unks. This was the unction, this card. 2 unks just really performing brilliantly. And then the main event, Aljamain Sterling versus Yusuf Zalal. Quality grappling on display, decent striking on display. It was one of those ones where Aljamain Sterling, let's do the main event first. Aljamain Sterling had just fought Brian Ortega. And Brian Ortega looked so washed and hopeless in that fight that I felt like the entire point, there was no point in that fight. I thought it was just a filler, a waste of time, a way for Aljamain Sterling to make some money. It didn't tell us anything about Aljamain Sterling's further career, that he can hit Brian Ortega with flush overhands on the chin because Brian Ortega has no reactions. With that being said, I'm now coming around to the opinion that maybe you should be allowed to fight a zombie every now and again, because Aljamain Sterling's hands have always been flappy and terrible. His striking has been made up for by volume and nice kicking and good frames, good movement. Whenever someone says, I have no punching power, how do I get better in MMA? It's like you can get by on kicks and frames if you move well. And Aljamain Sterling, John Jones, perfect examples of that. John Jones has landed 3 good punches ever, and they were to DC's body. Oh, and the one he hit Lyoto Machida with. But if you're using your hands to check, frame, pull in, clinch, poke eyes, that's another good one, then you're doing good work. With that being said, Aljamain Sterling came out and his hands were still quite flappy, but he was throwing them with confidence and he was landing them on Yusuf Zalal, who is pretty good at avoiding getting hit in the face for the most part. Now, of course, Yusuf Zalal was hampered by the fact that he, the Chekhov's gun in all these matchups is Aljamain Sterling wants to wrestle. He wants to get on your back, mostly. And whenever that exists and both fighters know about it, that changes the dynamic of the striking altogether. The number of good kickboxers who have fought grapplers and then been knocked out on the feet because they're so worried about the grappling is enormous in MMA. But Zalal's not bad on the floor, and I thought all the grappling in this fight was really solid. So this fight was Aljamain Sterling versus an opponent who clearly wasn't washed. I was watching Yusuf Zalal in this fight going, good reactions, doing good stuff. Aljamain Sterling's just beating him to the transitions. Aljamain Sterling's just beating him on the setups, walking him down. When, Yusuf Zalal has good outfighting technique, it's just that he ended up under pressure, walking himself onto the fence a lot of the time in this fight, which was good because I've never really rated Aljamain Sterling's offensive footwork much, but it looked really good in this fight. On the ground, there was loads to be happy about. Seeing effective guard passing and effective guards in MMA, you seldom see effective guard passing against guys who can't play any guard, but the guard passing in this fight was pretty on point, and both guys ended up on the bottom at some point, and both looked very competent from there. Yusuf Zalal was playing a knee shield from bottom half guard really well. This is something you'll see Craig Jones, Roger Gracie used to do this, Ryan Hall talks about this from time to time, but knee shield half guard, people think it's the top knee that's doing all the work, when really, if you can bring your bottom knee inside of their hip, inside of their belly, you can start playing as more sort of like a 3/4 guard. They've only got the lower portion of your bottom leg underneath them. And then you can start throwing up triangles, omoplatas, etc. from what is considered half guard, which is where most people don't expect it from. So Craig Jones, when he was a gi competitor, had tremendous success shooting these triangles from knee shield half guard. Because guys put pressure in and then they just fall into the trap. And Zalal did that here. He threw up a couple of triangles from the bottom of knee shield half guard, had Aljo stop in his tracks and have to defend the triangle. The triangle is, as someone who personally doesn't even bother trying them for the most part anymore. As soon as you meet someone good with good defense, if you're fighting someone who's the same skill level as you, very hard to finish a triangle unless you've got really good attributes, like length of limb. And in MMA, obviously, it's just so hard with the guy being able to slip his head out because of the sweat. Aljo's passing looked really solid, which was good because the UFC BJJ shared a clip of his match with, I think it's Dantzler. He's the next, no-name guy they've got to match up against Mikey Musumeci. But 2 years ago, maybe last year, no, I think it was 2 years ago, Aljo and Merab both had grappling matches with this guy who's a bit smaller than both, and neither could pass his guard, and both got really, really angry. They had this blood feud with this dude because they went to a jiu-jitsu competition, couldn't pass his guard, and then were like, oh, if it was a real fight. It's like, yeah, no, he's not ranked as an MMA fighter in the world, so he's not going to get the chance to MMA fight you. You agreed to do a jiu-jitsu tournament, and you can't pass guard. So it was nice to see Aljo pass guard quite well here. It was really nice, especially because Zalal's guard was competent. Zalal's guard passing was really nice, actually. He was using an over-under pass, which you barely ever see in MMA, and then he'd tripod up and use his underhand to grab the toes of the foot that he had trapped against his body, pull it across and start doing sort of a stuff pass, something Walid Ismail used to do back in the day, but Gordon Ryan does it with his body locks, Nicky Rod does it with his body locks, passing their left shin onto the front of your left knee and pushing it into their butt, and then pulling it across with your hand on the other side. And then Aljo got on the back, and that was basically the be-all and end-all, because Zalal couldn't get him off. I do like that Aljo does try and hit people from the back. It is still mechanically not a good position to hit from when you're both looking up or seated. If he was on top of the guy, mounted on his back, then he'd be able to hit him hard, and that's one of the worst positions to be in MMA for the bottom guy. But I do like that Aljo does that thing where he gets a body triangle because he's a lanky fella. He gets a body triangle and he leans way off to the side and starts bringing the overhead elbows down from the side into your ear and temple, which is a legit strike from the back, so we like that. A technically solid main event that was always going to be a technically solid main event on a card with nothing else happening, really. Then we had the Unks. Raoni Barcelos, love him. He fought Montel Jackson. I was actually just getting a bit more of the story on Raoni Barcelos. I knew he was always good, but he was back at Nova Unao back when Aldo was at the height of his powers, apparently, and he was taking down Aldo as a relative newbie to MMA. And if you're familiar with Jose Aldo, taking him down once in training ever would be enough to brag about for the rest of your life. But Barcelos, he didn't help himself by letting his hair go grey. Get the boot polish on that, mate, or just shave it altogether. But he was looking old, and it did show that he used to be pretty fast. He had a pretty effective counterpunching game, which was one of the nice surprises because he was billed as this grappler. Go back and watch his fight with Timo Valiev, which is two of the best unranked fighters you'll ever see fight each other. And in this fight, he was just getting hit without really reacting. Now, it helps that Montel Jackson is gigantic. He had an 8-inch reach advantage and a couple of inches of height, so he's just standing miles away, throwing punches with no setup and still bonking Barcelos on the chin. But after getting hurt a couple of times early, Barcelos did a really good job of picking up these single legs and hitting trips off them. It was a little bit like watching DC back in the day. He'd pick up the head outside single and then step deep and hit a inside trip on the back leg. DC would do that, and Barcelos did that here, without moving the knee out of the way sometimes, which was really cool. You watch DC's fight with Roy Nelson. He picks up the leg and he's just moving him around, trying to foot sweep the far leg. Goes through 2-3 foot sweeps in a chain before bothering to try and heist the leg up and get a little bit more access to that back leg. There was a really nice one where Barcelos picked up the single leg and then he'd bring his the arm that was on the backside of Montel Jackson's body around to grab the hip, and then he'd step through and then he'd step deep and foot sweep the ankle on the back leg, which was really cool. And then a lot of the time he shot and came up into the upper body along the fence. Beautiful, beautiful foot sweep where he tried the step inside body lock, the power twist, they call it, or the DC1, because DC did it so much. Step in the middle and you turn them over your thigh, basically, against the cage. And if they stumble, a lot of the time they'll give up their back to stay on balance. But in this one, Barcelos, just as Jackson stumbled off the fence and turned back to face, he just swept the foot clean out. It was gorgeous. And there was another one where he had Jackson pushed to the fence, pulled him forward so that he put one foot out in front of him, and then pushed him back towards the fence. And as he pushed him, he lifted the foot with his foot and just swept him over. Foot sweeps are so cool, and to get really good at them, you have to do so much time trotting up and down the gym together with a partner doing these ridiculous looking drills that look like they have no carryover or application to a real resisting opponent, but it is all about timing the step. And when you see someone do it well, it's effortless. The biggest reward to the lowest amount of strength used of any standing technique, probably. Steve Mocco is a great example of that in wrestling. He's the wrestling coach at American Top Team, and he's just a monster and always has been. There was another lad who was just phenomenal with foot sweeps in wrestling, and I can't remember his name, in American college wrestling. Mind you, if you look at two of the best wrestlers ever out of Russia, the Satiev brothers, Buvazar and Adam, which are very different names in complexity to remember and say, but they used to initiate with trips and then enter on legs, like fall on the leg and come up with it, as opposed to a lot of guys who grab the leg and then think about tripping afterwards. So a cool fight. Montel Jackson didn't look bad. I thought he looked bad against Figgy, but he looked like a competent fighter here. And Barcelos looked like a wily old man with a lot of cool techniques. There was some good, actually. There was like a matchup between the cross wrist get up on the ground from Montel Jackson and the smash pass on top by Hany Barcelos. Whenever you can smash a guy's knees together, so they're both pointing in the same direction, and put your hips on top of them, like you're sprawling, that's a smash pass. Levi Jones-Leary, very, very good at that no-gi competition. I mean, Buchecha, who's on this card, used to be insane at it in the gi and then had nowhere near the same success no-gi, because you can't grab the collars and just like row yourself into them. So there was some nice jiu-jitsu, like traditional jiu-jitsu on display from Barcelos in this one, even though Buchecha and Rodolfo Vieira had terrible nights. And then Davy Grant, oh my goodness. The best fighter the UK's ever produced. I mean, there's a case. You know how I feel about longevity in fighting. It's almost more impressive than, because otherwise it's just straight athleticism, and then as soon as you lose that, you start losing, and you go, I'm getting out of here. To hang around as long as Davy Grant has and keep beating good opponents, not the best opponents in the world, but like he's split decision against Yanez, split decision against Marcos. Should have won both of those in my opinion, but then I'm a massive Davy Grant fan. Did just lose to Charles Jourdain by guillotine choke in round one, but that's the first time in forever that someone has convincingly beaten him. He had a UFC debutante here, coming off the Contender Series, Adrian Luna Martinetti, and he put the old man whooping on him for the most part. Martinetti actually did grit his teeth and get through in the second and third round a bit, but just classic Davy Grant. Hard low kicks, switching stances. In fact, I'm going to plug One Championships, One Samurai, which is happening on Wednesday, so I have to preview it today on the normal podcast instead of on the Boycast. But John Haggerty is fighting on that card, and he does a lot. He does this beautiful move where it's linked to what Volkanovski and Adesanya do. This sort of using your offense to set up counters, or then just, if the guy doesn't come back at you, just going from the new stance. So both Volkanovski and Israel Adesanya use step up inside low kick and then step back on the opposite stance to then set up southpaw techniques or southpaw counters. John Haggerty is sublime at using whatever kick he wants to use, or just switching on the spot, so that he ends up in a southpaw stance and then throwing a left push kick or left teep or whatever you want to call it from the southpaw stance and hitting the guy high on the chest and just sending him flying at the ropes. And Davy Grant was doing that here. He was going switch into big rear leg teep to the belly, and then he'd go switch, pause, left straight, which works really well. And if you remember his fight with Jonathan Martinez, who's very, very good and should have been not getting knocked out by Davy Grant, he was looking constantly for a switch into southpaw right hook and then overhand left. And he finally got him with that late in the second round, knocked him out. Classic Davy Grant. I've always been of the opinion that whining about how someone's mechanics are wrong is not as useful as saying oh wow, look how their weird ass funky technique throws people off, because sometimes it's a trade-off. Right now, Emmanuel Navarrete has 2 of the world titles at his weight, and he was in the pound for pound top 10 not so long ago, and he punches like he taught himself from watching the scene where the monkey smashes the bones in Space Odyssey. Sometimes long, weird-ass punches catch people off guard in a way that the stuff they see all the time doesn't. And Davy Grant constantly catches people with these straight-armed left swing, right swing, or right swing, left swing, with jabs and head movement thrown in. So it's like street beefs boxing attached on the end of good boxing. But then that's how you actually be unpredictable. If you just do weird stuff all the time. If you're, what's his name, that lad who's always getting head kicked. Something Wings. Winged C, that's it. Yeah, if you're that guy and you're always doing unpredictable shit, people are going to quickly clock that they need to be careful for a round and a half, and then they're going to get reads on you. The trick is to throw the unpredictable shit in with good technical shit, and then you're really going to be unpredictable. So I didn't think Martinetti looked too bad. I did think he looked bad because he couldn't get anything going, but he started to get stuff going by just going, right, I've got to bite my mouthpiece and work my way forward. Because he was taking a pasting in the first round and then finally starts to land some stuff in the second and the third just by sort of enduring and pushing up on Grant and saying, look, you're 40 years old. No breaks, mate. No breaks. Rest of the card, pretty dog shit, if I'm honest. Let's talk about One Championship, One Samurai 1. Probably going to be the only One Samurai, if we're honest. One Championship are currently in legal action against the headliner of this, announced this week. They just fired Matt Hume and his whole team, which means better commentary because we don't have Rich Franklin on there. But they do seem to be in a spiral. However, they are putting on a good card in Japan. Chatri is always saying things about how much Japanese strikers suck, but he has signed a load of Japanese kickboxers, really good ones, and put them into fun matches on this card. I pointed out before that the UFC is always like, Canada, we love you, we owe you a debt, and then they turn up with the worst card you've ever seen. Meanwhile, One Championship is like, Japan, all your fighters are cringe and gay, and then they turn up with the best card you've ever seen. In fairness, Rodtang versus Takeru in the main event, I do not give a shit. I'm surprised to see people do, because in the first fight, Rodtang touched his chin and he imploded. It was very obvious that this is not the same fighter anymore. Takeru is unbelievably washed from years and years of leaving his brain on the inside of practice rings in gyms. But Takeru, I believe, has requested this match as his retirement fight. And it was quite a touching thing because it's on a major television network in Japan, which he said he always hoped for, because apparently K1 used to be and hasn't been for a long time. So that's really touching to know that. But the real meat of this card for the educated fight fan, they always put like the best fight in the middle of the card, and I don't know why. But the best fight on this card for me, Jonathan Haggerty versus Yuki Yoza, one featherweight kickboxing championship. I have a John Haggerty piece dropping on the Patreon tomorrow. Not a matchup piece, but specifically John Haggerty and how he sort of developed. Because John Haggerty excelled in Muay Thai, doing things that most Farang don't do. So he had a great teep and great elbows, where most guys who compete in Muay Thai from the West and don't grow up in Thailand learning Muay Thai there, they tend to be like kickboxers who then have to deal with the Muay Thai skill set, or rule set rather. John Haggerty, like, you can watch him fight good Thais and out-teep them. Rodtang, before his second match, was like, I couldn't believe how much I was getting teeped by this lad. The teep barely exists in kickboxing for some reason, but I mean, when Haggerty fights in kickboxing, he does it. You know, Sitachai, when he beat Masaki Noiri, it was all teeps. When Superbon beat Masaki Noiri, it was all teeps. When Tawanchai was about to beat Masaki Noiri and then tripped up and got chinned, it was all teeps that was keeping Noiri off. The teep is massively undervalued in kickboxing, and particularly Japanese kickboxing. And it doesn't seem to be a rules thing. It doesn't seem to be a scoring thing. It's just not valued, which is crazy. But John Haggerty had this amazing teep, and then he'd use the teep to cover leaping in with the elbows. That's how he got famous. He knocked down Joseph Lasiri in a 4-ounce Muay Thai fight in one. He does it in every fight. Establishes the teep, raises the knee. They either bring up their leg to check what they think is coming, or they drop their hands to try and grab the leg or parry it and stand still. And then he jumps in and elbows them in the face. Now, when he started doing kickboxing, obviously no elbows. And his hands were pretty flappy. But after the Rodtang losses, for about 6-7 fights, he starts using his hands more. And it means that he has to come down out of this heavy on the rear leg stance, and he starts spreading his feet more, bouncing in and out. If you watch his fights with Lobo and Andrade, it's this constant bouncing in and out, balancing between the short stance and the long stance. Whereas if you watch before that, it's all short, heavy on the back leg, light leg ready to go. That's his standard position. He doesn't leave it unless he's like falling forward with punches, because his boxing game just was not very special. It was pretty bad, actually. But yeah, he's grown in confidence with his hands, and he's looked really... I think going up in weight and finding out that he's got a bit of power in his hands really made him turn a corner developmentally. He's fighting Yuki Yoza, who, if you've listened to this podcast once, you've heard me talk about, because he's my favorite... Well, he's one of my favorite fighters going right now. He's just... It's like having Andy Hug back in that he fights not a lot like Andy Hug, but Andy Hug was completely unique. Nobody kicked like that. Nobody fought like that. And it's been 30 years, and nobody fights like that. It's crazy. And Yuki Yoza is another one where it's just like, oh my God, no one fights like this. And I saw someone quote him somewhere saying, like, this isn't Kyokushin, because that's where he comes from. He comes from a Kyokushin background. He was, I believe, the youngest world champion in Kyokushin, 19 years old, and then jumped straight to kickboxing. He said, it's not karate, it's me, which I think is a great expression. But I've heard all kinds of weird things about him, like he runs 10 miles a day for fun and shit. A fighter in his prime, and also sort of mysticism of speaking in a different language to most of the people who enjoy watching him. So it's kind of like Fedor. Yeah, he wrestles bears in his spare time. Well, then it turns out Habib actually had wrestled a bear cub when he was a kid. But what you do see of Yuki Yoza is, I mean, go watch my videos or read my articles on the Patreon talking about him. Brilliant use of the calf kick, just like Yotin, uses the right kick to the opponent's lead leg, which is out there. It's easy to block. And the moment you start blocking, he starts building. Because if you don't block, you get calf kicked to death. Very, very quickly. When you do block, he starts kicking under it at your back leg. He starts turning it into an inside-out crescent kick to the head. He starts push kicking. I think out in the open, he's really interesting because he does sort of like a bouncing in and out step with his left leg and sets up cool switch kicks and big front kicks that way. You don't see him get stuck on the outside much, which I think could be a risk with the teep. He's a buzzsaw on the inside because his kicking style, while it is kicking, it's very close range for a kicking game. It's kind of like we were talking about with Cub Swanson in my article the other week. Like, he used to land this right low kick from right on top of people and then hit them with the longest left hook he could throw, like almost straight arm, thumb turned down. Yeah, a traditional low kick and a traditional left hook are completely different ranges. But the shortest low kick you can throw and the longest left hook you can throw, you can ding him about. You know, you can catch him with both on the end of him. There's a great clip of him dropping Hakran Diaz, where he right low kicks and then leaps in with this left hook immediately afterwards and drops him because he's like checking the kick and he gets chinned on one leg. So yeah, Yuki Yoza likes to tear it up on the inside, combination punching into low kicks, and particularly low kicks on the back leg, which you almost never see. Or didn't until he came along and popularized it. I think you're going to be... Last time I said, oh, watch them not enforce the rules on the clinch when Superlek wants to tie up. But they did. It's Yuki Yoza who risks getting into trouble for clinch shit here. And it's going to be parrying those front kicks and threatening to either sweep or throw Haggerty. Now, Yuki Yoza did fight Taiyo Asahisa, who's got a very different style because he's another Kyokushin sort of guy, but he's brilliant with his front kicks. These beautiful marching front kicks. He'll lift one knee and then front kick you in the face with the other. He doesn't come out of the high, the bouncing lead leg. He doesn't have a very Thai stance or style, but he does throw a lot of front kicks. And Yuki Yoza was able to time cut kicks under front kicks. And he's the only person I've ever seen do it consistently. He'd throw these round kicks and his knee would knock the foot of Asahisa offline and his foot would connect behind Asahisa's standing leg. If you watch the first fight between them, Asahisa's completely lost because it's like you shouldn't be... He's considerably taller and longer than Yuki Yoza. He shouldn't be getting cut kicked when he's trying to front kick him. So that all intrigues me a lot. The standard Yuki Yoza entrance, he uses the calf kick from a nice long range to get the guy picking his leg up and then surges in like Yotin does. But the other standard Yuki Yoza entrance is to pick the lead leg up as if to teep and leap in with the left hook, which is very similar to Jonathan Haggerty's fake teep into elbow, fake teep into overhand. I think this is a great fucking fight. I cannot wait to see it. There is a question mark over Yuki Yoza dealing with the teep because he trains out of Team Vasilius, and if there's one thing I know that they can't deal with, it's a good Muay Thai teep. Haggerty on the inside is another question because I see him over-rely. When he was in Muay Thai, he used to rely on the elbows a lot. I mean, he still fights intermittently in Muay Thai. He alternates between Muay Thai and kickboxing because he's like one of their only stars. But The way he gets out of trouble is he covers up. He gets into trouble a lot because he covers up. He does too much covering and not enough moving a lot of the time. Covers up and then tries to spike the guy with an elbow straight out of this high double forearms cover. And he was doing it against Rodtang, and it's like blasting Rodtang in the head, but still getting beaten up because Rodtang didn't care. And in kickboxing, he's been reduced to sort of like cover up, time the left hook, which is legit. You will see people get smoked that way a lot. He caught Philip Lobo like that. He stunned... Was it Wairui he stunned like that? He stunned a couple of guys like that. But I'm watching him absorb like 4 or 5 body shots. He got dropped in the first round by body shots by Lobo because he's standing there trying to time these left hooks coming back. And then he eats 4 punches, comes back with the left hook, misses, and then he eats another body punch and goes down because he's out of position. The way he breaks pressure is to just try and power out of it, which is kind of contrary to his extremely smooth, slick style out in the open. So that's concerning for him. Meanwhile, Yuki Yoza, 5 rounders, none on his record. He fought in well, this was the thing that came up when it was the match, Tenshin versus Takeri, because Takeri fought under a rule set in K1 where even the championship fights are 3 rounds, whereas Rise will do 5 rounds. Yeah, so it turns out Yoza's done a few like 4-round fights because K1 does have the weird rule where if it's a draw, they in like an important fight or a tournament, they will do an extension round. So they announce the decision being a draw and they go right back to your corners, we're doing another round, which has got to be crazy for your adrenaline. But he's never been into a 5th round. Haggerty's done it twice in recent years, once against Same when he won the One Championship Muay Thai flyweight title, and then once against Wairui. That was his last fight. He didn't look particularly gassed against Wairui. He looked pretty good. He was really struggling with Rui's counterpunching, because he was committing to stepping in and punching a lot. So this is what I'm exploring in the article. He sort of had to devolve to get good at kickboxing from where he was in Muay Thai. But anyway, that's all for the article. All I have to say on that matchup, really, at the end of it, is that this one is giving me reason to live. I fucking love this matchup. You've also got Murat Gregorian versus Kaito Ono. Kaito, I don't know if he's as good as he used to be. Oh, he just beat Sitachai in Knockout. Man, Knockout's had some good names go through there lately. I've not been watching Knockout, even though they come up on, to be fair, they are one of the best maintained YouTube channels of all the kickboxing companies, and they do send you notifications when they're going live and whatever. Kaito's a weird one. I always talk about him because he's the only guy who's successful from shootboxing. Shootboxing is this weird sport with like standing submissions and tights. And it used to be that Andy Sauer was the only successful shootboxer, but Kaito was being like top 10 ranked in the world as a kickboxer, while half his fights were under shootboxing rules and not being considered kickboxing matches. But he's fighting Murat Gregorian, who is, he's long in the tooth now. He's only 34, but man, he's had like 100 fights. Kickboxing matches too. We're not talking about like child's Muay Thai. Only losses in recent years though, Superbon and Chingiz Alazov. So, still a monster, incredible pressure fighter, big hitter, should be great. Hiroki Yakamoto's fighting, and he's always fun. Hiromi Wajima is fighting, he's all right, yeah. Isuki Hirata's fighting, so, solid weigh-in photos, and also Ayaka Miura has also go viral. And anything else on here? Tatsumitsu Wada is fighting, and Yuya Wakamatsu is actually defending his MMA belt in one, which is crazy because they just cut like half their MMA fighters. They let go of Gary Tonin, who was like one of the few legit MMA guys they have. So they're either just banking it all on the Ruotolos or they're just not going to do MMA anymore. And then Toki Tamaru's on the undercard, which is just Toki Tamaru, another cautionary tale from Japanese kickboxing. He was on top of the world. He wasn't quite on top of the world. He lost a title fight to Shiro in September 2024, which we covered on the podcast. But he then decided to go to MMA, and he spent a whole year to lose to Joe Hiramoto, who's Ren Hiramoto's little brother, in a fight that sucked. And now he's back to kickboxing. And it's this, it's that, or you do what Tiger did, where you just keep going and you keep losing in MMA. Tiger on the run of his life, Rise champion, looking unstoppable, decides he's going to go to MMA and immediately fights a kickboxer in MMA and tries to double leg him. And his wrestling actually looked decent in that fight. But yes, it's a sad state of things when all your Japanese kickboxers are either being signed by one championship and put on the shelf for a long time, or doing MMA with Rizin as like a humiliation ritual. Anyway, Bet you didn't expect me to go that long after those fights. I'm your boy Jack Slack. If you want to get in on the Haggerty article, read all my Yuki Yoza work and all the other good shit I do, sign up to the Patreon and support the podcast. If not, I'll catch you next week. Jocelyn Edwards, unofficial interim champion. Bless.